Hey everyone, welcome back to She Births Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Wright, and today's guest is Judy. Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much for being
having me.
thank you so much for being a guest today. So can you tell my listeners what inspired you to write The Art of Bristol?
Well, I never intended on writing The Art of Bristle. I just took a lot of notes and journaled a lot throughout my life as a teenager and an adult.
Mhm.
And then it was during COVID, and my son had passed away. He's been gone for about 13 years now, and there was a lot of anger and pain. And so I just started writing,
Oh,
and
yeah.
healing is ongoing, but it helped me to heal, to get it all out on paper. And then I thought, there's got to be other people that have gone through the same or much worse than I ever have that need to hear this story and to encourage them to tell their own stories.
Yeah, it's good that you're doing this because I just lost my uncle in February 28th of this year, and my grandmother is taking it so hard, like losing her son because they went fishing together, they played cards together, like he took her on trips and everything. So now she doesn't have that person. So it's good that you're writing this story to help people like my grandmother.
And I'm so sorry for you and your grandma, because
Yeah.
the pain is, you can't even describe the pain.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
hard.
I mean, he was my uncle, but that was her son. Like, I don't understand what
Mm-hmm.
she's going through. It's a different kind
Mm-hmm.
of hurt,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely tough when you lose your
Yeah.
baby.
It's a
So,
club nobody wants to be a part of. Nobody wants to belong to that club, that's for sure.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, can you share what Bristol means to you in the context of your story?
Hmm. Bristle was always a form of pretend for me. I remember when something embarrassing would happen, um, or something traumatic would happen.
Mhm.
My mom would tell me, just bristle, Judy, just bristle. And what that was is just to pull my shoulders back, stand tall, and pretend,
Mhm.
and just hope that it hurries up and goes away, gets out, um, because a lot of it was really painful, and it was just my way to
Yeah.
ignore the pain. And I'd play a game with myself, and I'd say, well, in a month, no one's gonna remember, or
Mhm.
they will remember, but it won't be like it just happened today.
Yeah.
And 6 months to a year, they'll be talking about somebody else's problems, but mine will still be in
Mhm.
they'll still talk about it. And then I would think, well, in 50 years, they will have forgotten completely or be dead, and that's how I describe bristle, is just pretending that it never happened. And I told myself that so often sometimes that I believed it was a way for me to deal with all the pain and get through my pain by just pretending that it didn't ever happen,
Yeah.
if that
Did
makes
you ever
sense.
did you ever like go to group therapy like for grief or anything like that?
Um, I did. I started going to counseling after my dad died by suicide, and then I did that for a couple years, and then we moved to Tennessee, and on and off I went into therapy as I needed it.
Mhm.
And after my son died, I did that as well. Yes,
Oh man. So what was the hardest part of sharing your personal story?
the vulnerability of it,
Mhm.
putting myself out there, because journaling was all of my private
Mhm.
innermost thoughts and feelings and what had happened, um, and then just uh, letting it go.
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
letting it go for others to see it, and they did see a lot of what happened in my child home. They knew, they
Mhm.
neighbors and people knew, but um, but again, bristling, just pretending that they
Mhm.
didn't, and just go on, hold my shoulders back, and walk through life and get through this embarrassing moment. Um, but when I decided to try to get it published so it would get out there for other people, uh, to share my story with them, so and encourage them to share their stories, because I'm repeating myself, but again, I'm not the only one, and
Yeah.
there are so many more people that have so much more pain than I ever went through.
Yeah.
But the vulnerability of it.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. How did you write how did writing your book help you heal from your past?
Um, it connected dots.
Mhm.
It helped me with the pain and the anger that I felt and had,
Mhm.
um, by getting it all out on paper. Um, it just um, helped me to see more clearly rather than keeping it all inside in my head,
Mhm.
even on my notes. It was just when I put it all together and I put it in somewhat of an order as it happened, it helped. It
Mhm.
helped me see things a little bit more clearly, and it helped in my healing process too. And it helped me understand why I was so angry
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
why there was so much pain.
Yeah, definitely. So whenever like did any of your family members read your books, and like if they did, what was their reaction to it? Like did they know you was going through that?
My siblings were a lot younger than I am. I have some don't want to talk about it. I don't think that they have read it. I gave them before I got it published. I sent some of them an outline of it,
Mhm.
and it hurt them too. It hurt them because they had different parents than I did, if that makes sense. But they
Mhm.
had different relationships with my parents, um, and didn't go through some of the things that I did.
Mhm.
So that was it was painful for them too. But it needed my story needed to be told, and it needs to get out so
Yeah.
that others don't feel so alone, because we tend to hold everything in and build walls and try to protect,
Mhm.
but I'm not protecting by keeping my story to myself.
Right.
I need to share it so that other people know that they're not alone, because I know what it feels like to feel all alone
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
my pain and
What
afraid to share.
Yeah, definitely. What was the most surprising thing you learned about yourself during the writing process?
That I have a voice,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
I'm entitled to that voice, and that I'm entitled to boundaries, and I'm entitled to my feelings. I have a
Yeah.
right.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Oh yeah. So, around what age was you whenever you like noticed that your father had a problem with alcohol?
Um, I didn't really. I thought, because we were always told to keep everything that happens in our house.
Mhm.
And I was too afraid to reach out or to even discuss what went on in our house, in our home. I
Mhm.
always thought that it was just, I know it sounds weird, but it was just normal. It was
Mhm.
just everything my dad's drinking. Every dad drank. Every dad had a lot of beer in his refrigerator or hid bottles around the house. That's what was normal. So I didn't share it with anybody. I just, some of the things that I kept inside,
Mhm.
with my um, that I just didn't share with anybody. So I really didn't realize it until I was like in my 40s.
Oh.
I know that sounds strange, but I really didn't realize that was that was a big part of what was going on, and the trauma and the things that happened in our home, that there were reasons why. It wasn't just I was a bad kid.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
was I was the bad one, and that's why. Um, the things that happened to me is because it was my fault and I was just born bad.
Man. Man. Even your mother, like, did she do anything to stop it or like
No, my mom was pretty passive. It was more like, I would say, I felt like we took care of her feelings.
mhm,
I always felt like she was the one that needed to be protected
mm,
rather than her protecting us or protecting me. My dad said some really hurtful things to me and did some hurtful things to me. And my mom didn't do anything about it. And me as a mom, no, I would stand up for my children.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What were there parts of your childhood you found especially difficult to put in words?
Yes. I think the trauma, watching my parents physically fight, their physical fights, my dad turning his anger on me and physically abusing me um, was difficult to get out there because it almost, I know this sounds, I'm sure people can relate with me, but it almost feels like I'm not being, how do I say it, standing up for my parents. I'm going against them. I'm
Yeah.
talking, saying bad things about them that I shouldn't. I should
Uh,
keep it all in our home, what
yeah.
happened. And that was a big part of it for me.
Kind of reminds me, like your story a little bit reminds me of A Child Called It, how the little boy, he had his younger brother had a different relationship with his abusive mother than he did with his
Hmm.
abusive mother. Like his mother was abusing him but wasn't abusing the brother.
Hmm.
So they didn't like see eye to eye.
Right.
So yeah,
Hmm.
it kind of reminds me of that story a little.
Hmm. Yeah, we all they in my family there were different uh, parents, different relationships with them.
Yeah.
I asked my sisters, was my dad ever physically abusive to them, and they said no, and they have wonderful memories of both my parents.
Oh wow.
So it was just something. I don't know if my dad saw him a little bit of himself in me,
Hmm.
or maybe it was my mom. I don't know what it was that he didn't like, and maybe that wasn't even it at all. But um, he did some not so nice things that daddies shouldn't. They should treat their little girls.
Yeah, better.
And having a father-daughter relationship is
Hmm.
so important because it sets the way for the future for her relationships with men
Yes.
and her significant others.
Mhm.
And so daddies are very important in families,
Oh yeah,
especially
they are.
especially with the their daughters. And I
Yes.
didn't have that. I was always afraid of them.
Yeah. Man. There we have two comments. Somebody said sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you.
And then somebody said, what is the biggest struggle mentally with alcoholism?
um, well, I'm not an alcoholic, but I watched my dad.
Hmm.
um, what is the biggest struggle mentally with alcoholism? It makes me wonder if the alcohol, because sometimes they call it spirits, they
Yeah.
call it a spirits,
Yeah.
if it changed who he was, it took over, which I believe it did, took
Hmm.
over him. um, and that's when he would hit out, or
Yeah.
you know um, I think that was what was really hard for me, is not ever knowing after, when he was drinking, what was going to happen.
Man.
And that so I grew up hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
I was always afraid. I cowered.
Yeah.
um, Sometimes I still find myself doing that, and I have to set myself straight and talk to myself. No, I'm safe, I'm okay.
Man.
But yeah, it does. you know it affects the entire family. It really does. Even I believe even my brothers and sisters, um, I believe even though they say they've had really good childhood and they have really good memories, it still affected them in some way. Maybe they can't see it, but it did.
Mhm. Yeah. So
And
how did your relationship with your parents influence your sense of self-growth growing up?
um, I thought trying to be perfect and good and keep the house clean and do everything right and watch the kids all the time. Um, I thought that then they would love me more.
Yeah.
And so I found I grew up a people pleaser, always trying to figure out how they, I know it sounds weird, how I felt they wanted me to be the person around them, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to set them off because that's what I knew. I just grew up with that and I just wanted to be careful.
Yeah.
So,
Man. Wow. So can you tell us about the passive role your mother played and how it affected you?
um, well, there's several examples. My dad, my mom was had a friend and she was sleeping with another man, and my dad, I was only 17, and
Oh.
I always tried to be good. I was a good girl. And in other words, I didn't have any boyfriends or anything. I just, take care of my siblings, try to please my parents, and
Mhm.
try to do the best I could in school, even though I wasn't that great academically, because my mind was always, at home on my family and what was going on with them. Um, but um, so they were arguing over our dinner, and then he just leaned back from the table. I was sitting over there, and he looked at me and he said, "Judy," he said, "you're probably going to sleep with a man with," and he used a derogatory name. And my mom just sat there
Wow.
and she didn't do anything. And she didn't take me aside afterwards, like if as if she was afraid of my dad, which I'm sure at times she was afraid of him, but she didn't take me aside and say, "I'm so sorry that he said all those unkind words to you." And um, they were hateful words.
Mhm.
And racism was bad back in the 70s and the late 60s.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it's not, I mean, it's bad now still, but thankfully, it's not as, um, I don't know, you couldn't, if you had a relationship with someone that was black and someone that was white, that was so wrong.
Oh.
And so he told me that I was going to sleep. I mean, even just let alone to let me know that I was going to sleep with anybody was at 17 years old. I was just a
Wow.
young teenage girl.
Yeah.
And then to say something so horrific to me, and it just like, why would you think I'd sleep with a black man, let alone sleep with any man? How can you
Right.
say that to your daughter?
A
How
17-year-old.
at
Yeah.
17 and always trying to be good and want to do what was right to please everybody, because again, I thought then they would love me more, they would like me more, but that never happened.
Man. So let me ask you a question. This is a question outside of the questions. Like, do you feel like, I don't want to sound bad about this question,
Hmm.
but do you feel like a bit of relief that your father has passed, or do you are you sad that he passed, or
um I don't feel relief. I don't feel for relief for anyone, especially when they take their own life.
Mhm.
It's very, very sad
Mhm.
because I, I mean, there's been twice that I felt like doing it and I wasn't thinking about anybody. I was only thinking about me.
Mhm.
And I think you can get so much into yourself that you can't see outside of yourself,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Um, I was very sad, after he passed. Um, and I went through years of it, but of being sad, and my mother's death too. But I think after writing this book and getting everything out and seeing a little bit more clearly
Mhm.
of all of that, um, I'm angry. I get angry with him. I and my mom. I forgive them. I forgive them, but I'm still angry with them, if that makes sense.
Mhm. It does.
Um, um, and I think when I say I forgive them so that I can move on, because they never apologized to me. Never. So it's my way. I guess it's another way of bristle because it's my way of setting myself free
Mhm.
by
Yes.
trying to let them go. But I'll be honest, I still have bouts where those memories or something will trigger me, and then I get angry with them.
Yeah. I don't blame you at all. So, I wanted to talk about a little bit about your young adult series. Can you
Hmm.
introduce us to your new young adult self-esteem series?
Yeah, it's strength, resilience, and finding your voice. And it's about, and this my first book is Illusion Behind the Screen.
Ah.
And it's about a boy that is just coming into age, and he doesn't feel very good about himself, like most teenagers. And he finds a relationship online, but it turns out that it isn't who he thinks it is.
Oh.
It's a perv, a man that's trying to scam him for money.
Oh.
And so I write, that's my first one. And because there have been kids out there
Been
that have
scammed.
died by suicide
Mhm.
because it was so horrific for them, and how these people, they're not even people,
Predators.
they're
People that
evil,
prey on them. Yeah.
and prey on them, and they set them up for this, and they're so young and they don't understand that, you know the things that I don't know. But anyway, that's Liam. And then my next one is Maggie, and that's Brave Enough. And she's her story aligns with mine, where her mom was passive and her dad drank, and he would take out his frustrations not only on her mother but on Maggie too.
Mhm.
And then there's Brave Enough, and uh, Chloe grows up. Her dad and her brother died, and so her mother drinks a lot, and she invites a man to move in with her that she barely knows.
Oh.
And he he says and some things that he shouldn't be saying, and he acts certain ways that make her feel very uncomfortable and vulnerable, and her mom won't listen to her. And then there's Good Enough, and Good Enough is about a cheerleader who strives to be perfect, strives to do everything right, because she feels that if she does everything right, that she'll be loved more too. And her mom is an alcoholic,
Oh.
and this is where Liam, from my first story, Illusion Behind the Screen, moves to this new school, and he meets Olivia, and they have something in common because his dad is also an alcoholic. So they kind of tie in with my stories,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and and they're my children. They're also uh, the brave, my brave little heroes
Uh-huh.
that do what I didn't know I could do. And I didn't know that there were boundaries, or there were things like Alateen or Al-anon, or I could go to a school counselor, or that there were counselors outside of the home that could help me, or that there were safe places for me to go where I would be safe. And so I try to instill this in all those books so that kids, like I was, um, won't won't be as vulnerable or hold everything inside. I
Mhm.
try to in Brave Enough, I try to instill in that book that it's dangerous to run away, because we've all
Oh,
had
yeah.
that, especially as a teenager, being impulsive. and wanting to run away,
Mhm.
and how dangerous it is. It's more, sometimes, a lot of times, it's more dangerous than what they're living with at home.
Oh yeah.
But there are ways out, because both places can be very dangerous.
Oh yeah.
And I just want them to know that there are safe places for them,
Mhm.
and that they are entitled to boundaries, that they're not responsible for someone else's choices,
Mhm.
um, that they're only responsible for them
Yes.
and themselves, and that they don't deserve to be treated bad. They deserve better than that, and that it's not their fault, because there's a lot of shame when you feel like it's your fault, or that
Mhm.
you can't please, or you're being blamed for things, or told that you're not good enough. And so
Yeah.
I try to instill that in my books. And um, just in the population in the United States, there's close to 50% of the just the U.S. population that has dealt with alcoholism in the family.
Yep.
And they're not all abusive. Some of them are very passive. They all have their different quirks, but it's universal.
Mhm.
And the children of alcoholics, a lot of their traits and things and their feelings um, are universal as well,
Mhm.
in how they react to things, blaming themselves, feeling responsible. Um,
Or even some cases they turn to alcoholism themselves.
they
Like,
turn to alcoholism.
yeah.
Yeah, it's can be a vicious circle, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh.
Um, and it needs to stop, and it has to. They have to know, because I didn't know there was help. I thought it was just me. And now, after writing my book, I've got people telling me, no, it happened to me, no, this
Mhm.
happened to me. And I say, I wish we would have all known. I wish we would have known, because we could have gotten together and let each other know that we're okay, we're good, and try to find ways. But we all kept it inside and
Oh
kept it in the home.
yes.
And it's not disrespectful to go for help when your parents, and things that are happening, when there's addiction in the home, and things that are happening that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It's not disrespectful.
Yeah. And it's not supposed to just be kept in the family. Like, I
No,
don't like that. Like,
I don't either.
so what do you hope the young readers like take away from your books? Like young teen people that read your books.
That they have a voice, that they matter, that they're important, and that by speaking out helps take that shame away, because then they learn that they're not alone. There's many of them, many of us, that have been there, and many young adults that are going through it right now, which is very sad to me.
Mhm.
But um, to know that they're very important, and they just love the way they are. They
Yes.
just, yeah, because they're
Okay.
special and they're unique. They are.
Yes. So
Yeah.
how uh-oh, my computer turned off.
Oh,
Oh. Uh-oh. Yeah, it turned hello.
I'm here.
You are? Hold on.
Yep.
Can you see me still?
Just your forehead.
Uh-oh. My computer completely turned off. Okay. I don't know what happened. I think my dog touched something.
Oh no.
So how do you help teens understand their boundaries in your books?
Um, I think by trying to influence them, to let them know, to get help, to talk, to keep talking, even if nobody listens to you, to continue to talk,
Mhm.
because the more you talk it out, and you with trusted adults, with counselors, with Alateen and Al-anon,
Mhm.
you learn your boundaries. You start to see what's right and what's wrong,
Mhm.
and what goes against you.
Mhm.
And and what you can do about it. Because when you're isolated and you don't know and you're holding everything inside, you don't know. You don't
Right.
know what your boundaries are. Or if you're like me, if I was even entitled to have a boundary.
Mhm.
And so um, I try to, through my books, tell them or tell those that are the readers to just keep talking. Just keep talking.
Yes. What is Alateen and Alateen? You mentioned that like twice. What is that? I've never heard of
Well,
that.
yeah, I didn't see. I wish I would have known when I was growing up. I didn't even know that Alcoholics Anonymous was then, but they started Alcoholics Anonymous in the late 1950s, from my understanding.
Oh yeah, I've heard
And
of that.
yeah, and Al-Anon is uh, they're they have the 12 steps that they base on Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's for families and friends of the
Oh.
alcoholic. There are meetings that you can go to and counseling, and they encourage you. And Alateen is for the teenagers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I did
so they
not
have.
know that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I wish I would have known about that.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure when Alateen started, but I think it's really great. I think it,
Man, that
yeah.
is great. I did not know about that. Now I learned something new, and my
Hmm.
listeners learned something new. So, can you talk about why it's so important for young people to know their matter? They matter.
They're our future.
Yeah.
They do matter. There's so many troubled people in the world, and we need to instill that in them when they're young, to know that they are important just the way they are.
Hmm.
We're not born bad. We're
Yeah.
not. And we learn these things, especially if we have addiction going on in the family. There's all kinds of roles that are played in the family. Um, there's the scapegoat, and there's the comedian, and all of it, trying to get through and deal with the chaos that's going on in the family. And there's the one that tries, what is it? The really good one. What is the name of? I can't think tonight. But there's all kinds of roles that we take on. A lot of comedians now come from dysfunctional and traumatic families that dealt
Yeah.
with alcoholism in the family. Yeah. There's a lot of pain. And so it is important for us to instill that 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 they do matter, and that they have
Yes.
boundaries, and they're good enough, and they should reach out to get the help that they need at a young age, because
Hmm.
they are our future. And when you get as old as I am and you find out all these things, it's like, wow, I wish I would have known that then. I wish I
Yeah.
would have had those tools. So it's important for us to share our stories
Hmm.
and to help others, especially the young adults, to
Yes.
know that they're valued, they're important, and they're just to be you,
Hmm.
And it's really hard though when you're living in chaos
Hmm.
and you don't know what to do, and you're always trying to save everyone in the family, or you're feeling like it's your fault and you're the only one that can make it better, and
Yeah.
to get all those um, that bad thinking out of your head, and to get the
Yes.
help that you need,
Right.
just and to get that professional help. Start with a school counselor, you
Hmm.
know, uh, an adult, someone that you trust, and go with your intuition.
Hmm.
You can feel like maybe I should talk to this person, but your intuition is telling you no. Listen to your intuition
Yes.
and
A hundred
practice
percent.
listening to it.
100%.
Yeah.
Because you saying this and stuff, like I didn't grow up in a alcoholic, like with alcoholic parents or any or parent, and or with a passive mom. My mom, to this day, she has really bad anger issues. So she can go from 0 to 100 at the drop of a dime. And I'm just like, Mom, you can't be flipping out like that and going off on people like that. Like, it's disrespectful and rude. And so today we got into an argument at Dillard's because of her attitude. And I'm like, Mom, you can't just be yelling at people like that. And she's like,
Mhm.
no, blah, 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 blah. Like she just was yelling at the lady. And I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
so sorry for my mother. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Like, so that's what I had to deal with growing up with that. My mom with her anger issues. And she doesn't think she has anger issues.
Mhm.
So,
My mom was like that too. She was passive, but she would get real. She would rage.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm 37 now, and my mom is like 50. She's about to be 55 this month, and she
Mhm.
just goes crazy. I'm like,
Mhm.
chill.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, how have you found ways to forgive and let go of like your anger towards your parents?
Um, well, I'm still, like I mentioned before, I'm still have those triggers that come every once in a while, and I guess writing helps me get it
So,
out.
are you working on anything new, like any new books, or have you been doing like public speaking appearances or anything?
No, no public speaking experiences. I've just been writing. I got a couple more books for the self-esteem series that I'm
Oh,
working on, and so yeah, I'm just kind of
I think you
working
would
on.
do really good, like speaking in high school and like elementary school and middle school places, like speaking to, teens and young children about these things because I'm sure they're probably going through it right now, like
Mm-hmm,
a lot. Because these new age kids, I mean, parents are around my
mm-hmm,
age, and I know they
mm-hmm,
drink and party. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a compliment. I would like to help them, but and I hope that I can. I really do. I would love to do that, but there's only so much you can do to,
yeah,
especially when it comes to a parent and their child, and what
yeah, it's
and but
can,
there's so much. See, there's so much secrecy too in families,
oh yeah,
and that's what allows it to continue.
hmm, yeah,
you know, don't talk about it, don't say anything. And yet that's what makes it continue, is because the abuser or the predator, they get away with it,
oh yeah, oh
you
yeah,
know. And it's funny because we tell children to speak up
hmm,
and to tell, and when they do, there's been some of them that have,
and they don't.
and um, they're ridiculed. They're made to believe that shame on them for you to talk about your parents like that, and they never did that when they did. And that's another reason, I guess, you would keep everything inside, and then you get older and you speak it, and you still face you still face those people that
Yep.
want to scrutinize you. But we have to stand up for what's right, and we have to stand up for the children and the young adults.
Yes, I agree. So, what's the most important message you want to share with teens reading your books?
That they matter, that they're important, that the things that have happened to them are not a reflection on them, that their parents have a choice to
Mm,
change themselves, and they can only change them. And that young adult can only change what's best for you, what you can do for you. And that's by talking and going to someone that can really help them, like a counselor or Alateen, um, and talking it out and letting out, and journal,
yes.
talk out. And if you don't feel safe, don't stay in an unsafe situation.
Hmm.
If there's a neighbor that you trust, if you have to get out of the house, go over to your neighbor and stand on the porch. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yes, I
Not
agree.
ever. No.
I agree 1,000%. So, my last and final question before I let you go is what's next for you as a writer and an advocate?
Well, I'm still writing the self-esteem series,
Nice.
and I'm just gonna see where that leads. And I want to help. I want to have a voice for those that don't have a voice.
Hmm.
I want them to be able to, when they get strong enough, to know that then they have a voice,
Yes.
and then that the generational trauma will stop someday, hopefully, but it will stop for them. And if it stops for them, it stops for their generations.
Yes. And where can
Yeah.
my listeners buy your books?
Right now they're on Amazon.
Okay. On
Yeah.
Amazon. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much, Judy, for being a guest on my podcast today and chatting with me.
Thank you, Brooke, so much for allowing me this opportunity to talk about them and to get my message out. I really appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. You have a great day.
You too. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Hey everyone, I want to thank you all so much for listening to my interview with Judy. As she said, you can purchase her books on Amazon. And I want to thank you all so much for listening and see you next time for the next interview.